The plane was falling straight toward the mountain, both pilots unconscious, 140 lives hanging by a single thread. Then a 17-year-old girl walked into the cockpit and calmly took control. In the tower, a controller heard her voice on the radio, and the whole room went silent. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. 200 feet below the clouds, a wall of rock was waiting. 140 passengers had no idea their lives now depended on a 17-year-old girl sitting quietly in seat 14C. When she stood up and walked toward the cockpit door, the flight attendants tried to stop her. Nobody knew her name yet. In a few minutes, the whole world would. Her name was Maya Voss, and she was flying home from a small town in Montana. She wore a plain gray hoodie and old sneakers. Her hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. To anyone looking at her, she was just another teenager scrolling on her phone, waiting for the flight to land. No one on that plane knew that Maya had spent the last 4 years of her life inside the cockpit of small planes, learning to fly through storms that grounded grown men. Maya's father, Daniel Voss, had been a mountain rescue pilot for 20 years. He flew tiny planes into places helicopters could not reach, dropping supplies to hikers trapped by snow, and picking up injured climbers from cliffs that had no roads. He was known across the Rocky Mountains simply as the Hawk, because he could find a landing spot where other pilots saw only rock and ice. Maya had grown up in the back seat of his plane before she could even reach the pedals. When Maya turned 12, her father started teaching her to fly. It was not normal flying school. He taught her in the old way, the way pilots flew before computers did most of the work. He would cover the instruments with tape and make her fly by feeling the wind through the plane. "Machines can break, Maya," he used to say. "But if you learn to feel the sky, you will never be lost." She thought he was just being a strict teacher. She did not know that one day his words would save more than 100 lives. 2 years ago, Daniel Voss died in a small plane crash while flying through a storm to rescue 2 lost hikers. The official report called it bad weather and pilot error. Maya never fully believed that explanation, but she had no proof, and she was too young for anyone to listen. Instead of chasing answers, she chased her father's skill. She kept flying every weekend with her uncle, who had also been a pilot for many years. By the time she turned 17, Maya had more real flying hours than most new commercial pilots, even though she had no license and no one at her school knew her secret. That day, Maya was flying home on a regional passenger jet after visiting her uncle. The plane was cruising calmly above thick white clouds when she started to notice something strange. The air in the cabin smelled slightly sweet, almost like burnt metal mixed with something chemical. Most people would never notice it. But her father had trained her to notice smells, sounds, and small changes in the way a plane moved, because in the mountains, tiny details could mean the difference between life and death. A few minutes later, the plane tilted slightly to one side, then corrected itself in a shaky, uneven way. It was not normal turbulence. It felt like someone at the controls was struggling to keep the plane steady. Then the captain's voice came over the speakers, but it did not sound right. His words were slow and confused, like a man half asleep. The announcement stopped in the middle of a sentence. Maya's heart started pounding, but she did not panic. She had felt fear before, flying through storms with her father, and she remembered his voice clearly. "Panic kills faster than any storm, Maya. Stay calm, and think." She unbuckled her seatbelt and walked quickly toward the front of the plane. A flight attendant stepped in front of her, telling her to sit down. Maya spoke fast and firm. "The pilots are in trouble. I think it's the air system. I know how to fly. Please, let me in." The flight attendant hesitated, but something about the girl's steady voice made her believe it. She knocked hard on the cockpit door and used her emergency code to open it. What they found inside was worse than Maya feared. The captain was slumped forward, unconscious, his head resting near the controls. The first officer was awake but barely, his hands shaking, unable to hold the plane steady. The autopilot was still on, but the jet was slowly losing height, heading straight toward a range of tall, snow-covered mountains hidden inside the clouds. Maya grabbed the oxygen masks from the emergency box and placed them over both pilots' faces, hoping clean air would help them recover. Then she looked at the screen showing their path. The mountains ahead were not on any easy route. The plane needed a clear head and steady hands right now, and there was no time to wait for the pilots to wake up. Maya took a deep breath, sat down in the empty seat beside the controls, and picked up the radio microphone the way she had seen her father do 100 times before. "This is a passenger on this flight," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "Both pilots are unconscious or unable to fly. I have experience flying small planes. I need help right now." In the control tower on the ground, an air traffic controller named Frank Miller froze when he heard those words. He had worked in that tower for 30 years and had never once heard a passenger say those words on the radio. For a second, the whole room went silent. Then Frank leaned into his microphone, his voice steady despite his shock. "Copy that. Stay calm. Tell me your name and what you can see." "My name is Maya Voss," she said. "I can see clouds. No mountains yet, but the map shows we are heading straight into high terrain." Frank's hands moved quickly across his keyboard, pulling up the flight's exact position. His screen showed the jet flying directly toward a mountain range only a few minutes away, hidden completely inside thick clouds. If the plane kept its current path, it would fly straight into solid rock before anyone could see it coming. "Maya, I need you to turn the plane. Turn left now, heading 220, Frank said. Maya's eyes moved across the unfamiliar controls until she found the small wheel that changed direction. She turned it gently, watching the numbers on the screen shift slowly toward the new heading. The plane tilted just slightly, and she felt the engine sound change as the wings cut through the air at a new angle. "Turning now," she said. "Please, tell me what's next. I've never flown anything this big." Frank's supervisor rushed over as soon as she heard what was happening. She stared at the screen in disbelief. "A teenage girl is flying that plane," she whispered. Frank nodded, his eyes never leaving the radar. "She sounds calm. She sounds like she knows what she's doing. Right now, she's the only chance those people have." As the plane leveled onto its new path, Maya remembered something her father used to say about flying blind through clouds. He told her that even when you cannot see anything outside, the plane always tells you the truth if you listen carefully. She felt a small shake through the controls, a gentle push from one side. It reminded her of the mountain winds her father had taught her to read years ago on the small training flights back home. "There's wind pushing from the right," Maya said into the radio. "I think there's a mountain close on that side, even though I can't see it." Frank checked his terrain map and felt a chill run through him. She was right. A tall peak sat exactly where she described it, hidden completely by the clouds on his radar too. "She's reading the wind like a real bush pilot," he said quietly to his supervisor. "Just like the old-timers used to fly before all this technology." Guided partly by Frank's instructions and partly by the flying instincts her father had spent years building inside her, Maya slowly steered the plane through the hidden mountain pass. The controls felt heavy and strange in her hands, nothing like the small planes she had trained in, but the basic feeling was the same. Wind was wind. Danger was danger. And staying calm was still the only way through. After several tense minutes that felt like hours, the plane broke free of the thick clouds. Below her, Maya finally saw green valleys, a wide river, and far in the distance, the lights of an airport. She let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. "I can see the ground," she said, her voice cracking with relief. "We're clear of the mountains." In the tower, the whole room seemed to breathe again. Frank wiped his forehead and allowed himself a small, tired smile. "Good work, Maya. Now the hard part. We need to land this plane, and I'm going to walk you through every single step." By now, the first officer had regained just enough strength from the oxygen to speak. even if he could not yet move his arms properly. Between Frank's calm instructions from the ground and the first officer's weak but clear guidance from beside her, Maya slowly brought the huge jet down toward the runway. She lowered the landing gear when they told her to. She adjusted the flaps when they told her to. Her hands were shaking, but her mind stayed focused, just like her father had taught her. The wheels touched the runway hard but steady, bouncing once before settling onto the concrete. Maya pulled back on the controls the way the first officer whispered to her, and slowly, the huge plane began to slow down along the long runway, surrounded by flashing lights from fire trucks and ambulances that had gathered to meet them. When the plane finally rolled to a stop, the cabin exploded into cheers and crying. Passengers hugged each other. Some called their families right away, unable to stop shaking. In the cockpit, Maya sat still for a moment, her hands trembling on the controls she had just used to save a plane full of strangers. The captain, now slowly waking up from the oxygen, looked over at the teenage girl in his seat and could barely speak. "You flew this plane," he said softly. "You actually flew this plane." "My dad taught me," Maya answered quietly. "He was a pilot too." News of what happened spread fast. Within hours, reporters were calling it a miracle landing. Airlines and aviation experts studied the flight recordings in shock, unable to believe a teenager with no official license had guided a passenger jet through a hidden mountain pass and landed it safely. Investigators later discovered that a faulty part in the air system had leaked dangerous fumes into the cockpit, poisoning both pilots slowly during the flight. If Maya had not noticed the smell early and acted fast, the plane would have flown straight into the mountains before anyone could stop it. A few weeks later, Maya sat quietly at her father's old workbench in the garage, looking at his worn flying logbook. She traced her fingers over his handwriting, remembering every lesson, every storm they had flown through together. "I did what you taught me, Dad," she whispered. "I stayed calm. I listened to the wind." Airlines offered her scholarships to become a licensed pilot. Reporters wanted more interviews. But Maya only wanted one thing, to keep flying, just like her father had. Not for fame, but because flying was the last piece of him she still had. And somewhere, in the quiet hum of every engine she would ever fly again, she knew she would still hear his voice, calm and steady, guiding her home.